This is the Clear Money Talk podcast, offering up creative solutions for your retirement future through education, choice, transparency, and empathy. Now, your host, CEO and founder of Clear Financial Partners, Tim Clairmont, and co-host, Tyler Andrews.
Hello, and welcome to Clear Money Talk. My name is Tim Clairmont. I'm the CEO and founder of Clear Financial Partners, and with me, as always, is Mr. Tyler Andrews.
We're here. We're recording a podcast.
Yes.
Good to be back. Thank you for tuning in. We are excited. It's a Monday. We're energized. We were just geeking out on some really nerdy stuff. So we're just like, our brains are just going all over the place right now.
That's very on point. Yes, yeah. I've had my nitro cold brew already for the morning, and I'm pretty wired as far as the caffeine element goes. So I'm excited to learn what the topic is today.
Yeah.
You know it. Tyler knows it. I don't know it. I get to find out right now as we pick our brains about whatever the question of the day is. So what's the question of the day?
I'm thinking next week you got to surprise me.
Ooh, that would be fun.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
Maybe every 5 you do one, and then for the remaining, I'll choose them or something like that. Anyways,
I like that.
I would like to have the surprise.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good time.
It's fun.
I really enjoy the surprises. So what do you have for us today?
All right. Topic of the day: what strategies can help you make the most of your 401k?
Okay.
I thought this would be a good topic to talk about today. It's still the beginning of the new year for the most part, and that's always a great opportunity, at least for myself speaking, to review things like my 401k. You know, we were talking about our 401k, personal 401k allocations earlier. It's a great opportunity at the start of the new year to just say, okay, it's a new year. Let's look at everything I have going on, 401k included, if you have one available to you through your employer, or if you're self-employed, you have one, that you have set up. And just make sure it's all good to go, really, at the bare bones. And we'll talk through some of the things to be looking for and to consider with your employer-sponsored retirement plans, whether it's a 401k, a 403b, a 457 plan. There's all these different numbers and letters that dictate what kind of employer retirement plans available to you on your specific work situation. So we'll kind of go through some of that stuff.
Got it. No, that sounds good. I've already got my brain spinning on the topic now that I've just heard what the topic is. I think we're definitely gonna want to touch on how much do you put in, so contribution amounts, the benefits of dollar cost averaging. We'll probably want to touch on that.
Yep.
Roth versus traditional. Definitely we're going to want to touch on that. Should you borrow against it? That one might come up, so we could touch on that. And then ultimately, what do you do with those old 401ks when they're with a previous employer? You're no longer there. But yeah, those are the things that kind of come to mind categorically. Yeah. So
I'm laughing because I had jotted down some talking points. Mine were understanding the employer match, maximizing contributions. That's one of the things you mentioned. Choosing the right investment options. Choosing between Pretax and Roth contributions. Rebalancing, reviewing it. Rolling over old 401ks, which you talked about, and then avoiding common mistakes, which is maybe loans or taking withdrawals and the nuances, pros and cons of all that stuff. So you pretty much verbatim came up with the same talking points that I did. So
that's good.
That means we're synced up.
Yeah, we're all aligned. So let's hit them. Let's
go first?
Start. Yeah, let's start with the match because when I was thinking about contributions, I was thinking the match as well as the contribution limits.
Yeah.
Kind of tying those two together. The fact is. But actually, before we go to the match and the contribution limits, let me just share this with you. A lot of people are like 401k, like where did that come from? 457, where did that come? 403b, these are tax codes. That's all it is. If you wanted to figure out what the rules are of the 401k and the IRS tax codes, you would say, I want to go to tax code 401 subsection K, and that's going to explain the 401k. And then similarly, like with the 403b rules and the 403b7 rules and all those are just tax codes. So it's just referencing those tax codes, but we use them today, like they're just normal words. So when you hear 401k, 457, 403b, all they are is tax codes for what are called qualified plans. They're qualified retirement plans, and they qualify for special tax breaks. That's why they are listed by tax codes. So this special tax break, most often, that's been around since the very first 401k stuff came out, which I believe was in the 1970s.
Late 1970s, I believe. Yeah, was
pre-tax contributions. So you can contribute into a 401k before paying taxes on it. And if you had, for example, let's say you made $100,000 a year, you put $10,000 in your 401k, you'll only get taxed on the $90,000 that you made that you didn't put in the 401k. So it's kind of like it makes it invisible to the IRS legally for charging you taxes on it. So that saves you taxes on whatever you contribute in the 401k up front. And it's commonly known as a tax deduction or a pre-tax contribution. It has the same net effect. But let's go to the contributions. So contributions, one of the first things that we always recommend clients do is take the free money. And the free money is your match. If the employer you work with is generous enough to have a match contribution for your 401k, and many times it's dollar for dollar up to a certain percentage of your income, that's free money. You want to take that free money. And most often we see a 3% dollar for dollar match on the first 3% of your income, and then maybe 50 cents on the dollar for the fourth and fifth percent. That's a pretty common structure, which means if you have a match like that, you would want to make sure you contribute 5% of your income at a minimum, and then your employer would be matching you dollar for dollar on the first three, 50 cents on the fourth and fifth, so they'd be matching you 4%. So in that example that I just gave you previously, if you made $100,000 a year, 5% by you would be $5,000 you get to contribute, pre-tax in this example that we just talked about. And then your employer would put in another $4,000, also pre-tax. So you're putting in $5,000. That saves you at $100,000. If you're in the state of Oregon, you have 9% state income taxes plus 12% roughly, maybe 22 depending on if you're married and how high your income rate goes. But let's call it 12 plus 9 is 21%. You're saving yourself, $1,050 off your tax bill. Yeah. So it's kind of like you put in $3,950 of your own money, and you save $1,050 in your taxes, hence $5,000 goes in, and your employer puts in $4,000. Where do you know a place where you can put in effectively $3,950 out of your paycheck and get $9,000 total contributed to an account? That's effectively what the 401k can do in just a pre-tax contribution with matching contributions. So numbers always help me put things into perspective, and that's a cool example that you just shared. So I hope all the listeners got excited about that, like I did. Cool. Okay, so we're talking about that. Next, what's next? So you do the employer match, you get the full employer match. You're contributing enough to get the employer match because, like Tim said, you don't want to leave money on the table if it's available to you. What's after that? Yeah, so I would say the next thing is you want to think about, am I going to contribute this in a pre-tax or a Roth capacity? I think it makes sense for us to probably go there. Yeah. And understanding the difference between pre-tax and Roth is really important. When it comes to saving for retirement, it's one of the biggest differentiators out there. And the Roth IRA and Roth 401k options really came out in the late 1990s. That's when the first Roth IRA came out. So they weren't around in the early 90s or the 80s or the 70s when the 401k rules came out. And it was named after a senator whose last name was Roth, hence, Roth IRA and Roth 401ks. And the idea that the senator had, and that the bill that ultimately passed to create the Roth IRA, was what if we pay the taxes up front on the money before it goes in, and then the investor gets to take everything out tax-free when they retire. And that's the difference between a Roth IRA and a pre-tax or tax-deductible contribution to a traditional IRA or a traditional 401k contribution. So when you think about that, think about the implications. If you're 40 years old today and you stick $10,000 into your 401k, kind of like what we were just talking about, and you contributed on your own. If you put it in pre-tax, you get all those tax benefits we talked about. So if $10,000 comes off your tax bill and you are in the roughly 21% tax bracket, that 12 plus 9 in Oregon as an example, though if you're in California, it's probably 10 plus 12, so now you're in 22%. Or if you're in Washington, it's probably just 12 because you have no state income tax in Washington, which, kudos to you. So the point is that in this example, let's assume it's about 21%. So that out of the $10,000, that saves $2,100 in taxes. So you've saved $2,100 in taxes, but now the $10,000 is presumably invested. You're hoping it's going to grow. You're 40 years old. By the time you're 65 years old, 25 years later, it's very possible that $10,000 initial investment could be worth $20,000 to $50,000. And if you've earned $10,000 to $40,000 of interest earnings, you haven't paid taxes along the way. In a pre-tax retirement account like a tax-deductible 401k contribution, you're going to be paying taxes on that $20,000 to $50,000 when it comes out. So if you take all $50,000 out at 65 years old in that example, you'll pay income taxes on $50,000 at whatever the rates are at that time. And we have no idea what the rates will actually be in 25 years. Alternatively, if you put the $10,000 in now and say, I'm going to forfeit that extra $2,100 of tax breaks that I could have otherwise earned if I contributed pre-tax, so you're paying the extra $2,100 in taxes today on the $10,000, then if it grows 25 years from now to somewhere between $20,000 and $50,000, all $20,000 to $50,000, including all the earnings that you've never paid any taxes on, will come out tax-free. So that's the power of a Roth IRA. Think of it in this analogy. This is a great analogy I heard from somebody else that, frankly, I think just makes a lot of sense. Do you want to pay taxes on the seeds that you plant in the cornfield so that you can get all the corn later when you harvest it tax-free? Or do you want to get a tax deduction on the seeds and then pay taxes on all the corn later when you take that out? And the answer to that is, of course, it depends. And that's where you should talk to a financial advisor about your situation, how much income you make, what you're thinking you're going to make in retirement, what's your scenario look like, and then try to make that right determination as to does it make sense to do it pre-tax or Roth. But don't let that choice paralyze you. Do not let the indecision associated with, I don't know if I should do tax deductible or tax deductible or Roth IRA contribution or Roth 401k contribution. I'm just going to keep thinking about it. And then you do nothing. That's horrible. You have to
Don't do that.
Start contributing. Einstein said the eighth wonder of the world is compound interest. And the earlier you start, you're not going to make a wrong decision by doing pre-tax or Roth. Either one is good. It's just a matter of, which one might theoretically be better for you. That's probably worth analyzing with a financial advisor.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that sounds good. Okay. Maximizing contributions. Yeah. Maximizing contributions is not only deciding the tax type of the contributions that are going in pre-tax or Roth, as Tim was talking about. Not only does it mean that, or maximizing the employer match, making sure that you're getting that, but it also means if you have additional income that you want to save, do you go back and make sure that you cap it out as much as you can? There are limits on how much the IRS lets you stick into these qualified retirement plans. You can't put unlimited amounts of money. You have to have enough earned income to justify the amount you're putting in there. You can't put more in than you're earning. And two, they cap you at how much you can put in annually. So right now, if you're under 50 years old, the cap is $23,500. If you're over 50, they let you have an additional catch-up contribution of $7,500, so you can get up to $31,000. And there's a new provision with the Secure Act 2.0 that just came out between the ages, I believe, between 60 and 63. You're allowed even additional catch-up contributions to a smaller degree, but they're trying to give you a smaller window to kind of accelerate additional contributions in there during that small window. So if that's available to you, consider it if it's something you want to take advantage of. And all these new rules have come out recently, so everyone is learning them, implementing them where they make sense. A lot of 401k plans are still a little bit behind the eight ball in getting some of these new provisions implemented. Another one is employers can match with Roth contributions now. A lot of employers still haven't adopted that and got that fully in there. I'm sure they'll be forced to do that in the coming months and years. So all these little things, that are constantly changing with the retirement plans, just make sure that you're also being cognizant of those things. And if applicable, take advantage of it if it makes sense for you. Where do you want to go next?
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of an analogy. So I feel like
I like analogies.
When you think of contributing to these 401k plans and all the changing rules and everything, basically it's kind of like this amazing board game. And whether you're playing the board game like the game of life, for example, have you ever played that where you spin the wheel and you decide, am I going to go to college or not go to college, and the implications associated with that? And then you have babies in the little car that you put in and it costs you money. And you have the auto hazard if you're going to buy auto insurance or health insurance, and you get the bills and all kinds of stuff like that along the way. It's very much like that. That's what's going on with your retirement income plan strategy, and the rules. That little couple few pages of the rules of the game that control exactly how this game works and what you're supposed to do and not supposed to do. That's what we read and study. We study the rules of that game, retirement income planning game, and they change all the time, just like the Secure Act 2.0 implications. And how does that change things? And ultimately, clients hire us as a strategy to play that game of life for them, so that they can then make sure they're optimizing their retirement income plan. And you don't know what you don't know. It's almost like there's these little secret paths along the way in the game of life, and you just drive right past them if you didn't know it was there. And that's where our job is to know all of those secret paths, so that you can take advantage of them and win the game of life, even more successfully. And that's what I really love to do. I mean, I've always been a game junkie. I enjoy video games and board games and card games and all that kind of stuff. And that's what we get to do for you, but it's with real money, and it makes a difference. It can change your life. So yeah.
And with that, let's talk about investment options. I'm not going to go super granular on this topic, but choosing the right investment options, it's not a one-stop shop. It's going to be unique to you, your age, your risk tolerance, your time horizon, your investment experience, all these different factors. But don't make the mistake of just thinking because you've told your employer you want to contribute X amount of dollars every paycheck to the 401k that's it. The money will go into the 401k. That's the employer will make sure of that. But then what happens to the money? Does it get invested for you? Well, if it does, who's choosing the investment options? Or does it just go into like a very conservative position? Most likely, if you haven't chosen and told the 401k and your employer how you want the money in the plan to be invested, most likely it's just sticking in cash or a money market or something very conservative. And there's certain pros and cons to be cognizant of that with that. I've seen it all too many times where someone's like, yeah, I've just been contributing to the 401k. It's been in cash inside the 401k the entire time. And, that presents its own unique opportunity cost. So kind of like Tim's analogy, the Farmer John analogy with planting the seeds. You pay tax on the seeds before or after when you're harvesting the corn. Let's think about the seeds as investment options. You can have different types of seeds. Maybe some are zucchini, maybe some are corn, maybe some are pumpkins or carrots, and they're all different, and they'll all grow at different rates, and they'll all yield different types of vegetables or fruits. And you get to choose the seeds that your money is going into inside that 401k plan.
That's great.
Maybe. I mean, you're the analogy king,
I love
so
that.
You're either like, this is really good or bad.
That's a really good analogy. It's good.
But you have to choose the type of seed that you want to use in the plan.
Yeah, and some of them can grow really slow, like that cash position you're talking about.
Correct.
And that seed might just like sit there for 10 years and just barely have the little tiniest sprout sticking out of the seed. And that's what happens when you're in a very, very low risk and, it's safe for your principal. Maybe you're not going to lose any of the seed, which feels really good, but you're not necessarily growing very much. So one other thing I guess I would share is I use you might notice if you watch me on the video or if you're listening to this, a lot of times this math is very quick in my head. I don't have a calculator in my hand. I'm just doing quick math in my head. And one of the ways that I do quick math in my head for compound interest is the rule of 72, which we've talked about the rule of 72 previously, but I'm just going to share with you, we haven't talked about on this show, so I'm going to share with you really quick some of that mental math I do for growth of the seeds, which is what the rule of 72 does. So
this is great.
The rule of 72 basically says whatever rate of return you assume you're going to earn on your seeds, so whatever that percentage rate of return is, if you divide that percentage rate of return into the number 72, it'll tell you how many years it takes to double. So when I was giving you an example of $10,000 at 40 years old over a 25-year period of time, growing to somewhere between $20,000 and $50,000 off the top of my head, I can back calculate and say, well, if the 10,000 grows to 20,000 over a period of 25 years, I could divide 25 years into the number 72, and I know that roughly 3 times 25 would be 75, which is greater than 72. So I can tell you just in mental math that the rate of return that portfolio would need to earn in order for $10,000 to become $25,000 over a period of 25 years is a little less than 3%. It's probably somewhere around 2.8, 2.9%. And we could calculate that with our calculator, but that's a pretty low rate of return assumption as far as a long-term 25-year investment. On the other hand, the $50,000 balance, you're going to say, hey, that $10,000 doubled once at 20,000, it doubled again to 40,000, and then from 40 to 50,000, it was only increasing by 25%. So it had 2 doubles in it over a period of 25 years, and with a little left on the back end. So it was probably doubling every 10 years, give or take, as a ballpark. And we know that if it doubled 10 years, I could take the number 72 divided by 10, and it'll tell me that that was getting about a 7.2% rate of return. So at about a 7.2% rate of return, you would expect after 10 years that $10,000 investment to be worth 20. If it gets another 7.2% rate of return in that example, another 10 years later, it would be 40. And then at a 7.2% rate of return, in another 5 years, it wouldn't have quite obviously doubled yet. It would take 10 years to double again to $80,000. But I suspect that 40 would get pretty close to 50 at about a 7 to 7.2% rate of return in that window. And that's just some quick mental math that we can do. So it's just, you're welcome to mimic that, learn that. You learn that rule of 72, and you can do some math. But as you can see, yields between 2.8 and 7.2% are not out of the realm of normal in terms of investments. That's actually not uncommon, though past performance is not an indication of future results, and we don't know exactly what rate of return you're going to get on those seeds. You plant the seeds and you wait and see what vegetables grow and how fast they grow, and that's the nature of investing. If it's for sure and certain, it's going to be a low rate of return. The greater the risk, the greater the variability, and the greater the rate of return you expect to earn in order to make it worth taking the risk.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So your bottom line, just be aware of the investment options that are available in your employer-sponsored retirement plan. Choose the ones that, if you understand them, make most sense for you and your situation. If you don't understand the investment options and how to choose between this one and that one and that one, consult somebody that does. Maybe do some additional learning on your own time. And worst case scenario, you can consult a financial advisor or somebody who knows more about it.
Well, worst case scenario, I think that's best case scenario.
That's actually best case scenario.
Should.
Best case is you call us and we can talk to you about that. There's all these weird rules where, we can't tell you exactly what to do with your 401k and how to invest it, but you can usually get some general guidance on that stuff.
That's right. We
from
can't tell
qualified
you,
professionals.
We can't tell you on our podcast, and we can't tell you in our YouTube when you watch us, but we can tell you that one-on-one.
Yeah.
It's exactly what people hire us to help.
That's
them
right.
do. So yeah,
let's talk about rolling over 401ks.
Sure.
Benefits of that really quickly.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, especially if you're somebody that has switched jobs multiple times, and with new legislation, as we were talking about earlier, making it more and more common for 401ks to be available at most, if not all, employers these days. And a lot of those plans have usually pretty quick adoption for new employees to begin participating in those plans. It's not uncommon for, if you've had 2, 3, 4, 5 different jobs, as you're trying to figure out, where you're supposed to be from a professional employment standpoint, that maybe you have some old 401ks. Maybe some are smaller balances, some are a little bit larger, and those might be scattered all over the place with old employers, and those employers use different 401k providers, so you could have multiple 401ks kind of scattered all over the place. Rolling over 401ks can be a very powerful tool. One, to make sure that you're not leaving anything behind, that you're not forgetting money. If you forget it and it goes uncalled for a certain amount of time, it can actually get absorbed by your state, depending on the state rules for unclaimed assets. That's terrible. We don't want to see that happen to you. So make sure you keep track of the old 401ks and consolidate. Consolidation can be very powerful to one. Usually you can roll over old 401ks into your existing employer's 401k or retirement plan. Alternatively, you can roll them over to an individual IRA or individual Roth account, and that can be managed by yourself personally, or it can be managed by a financial advisor. That's what we do. And your breadth of investment options becomes way greater when you're able to roll over 401k. 401ks have a lot of limitations on what they have to offer inside those plans, not only the investment options, but the fee structure and the flexibility of those plans. When you get it outside those plans, usually your options are far greater, and you can have a lot more flexibility depending on your situation. So it's something to consider, and it's also kind of set it and forget it. You'd have all these 401ks, consolidate them at a minimum. It just helps you, so it's one less thing you have to think about.
Yep.
Anything else you'd want to add on that, Tim?
No, that's solid, man.
Yeah.
You really articulated it very clearly.
Thanks.
We come across people all the time that just have all those multiple retirement accounts from previous
not
employers,
uncommon, yeah.
and just aggregating them together is just an easier way for you to keep track of them. It is important to pay attention to the expense structure associated with where they're at. Sometimes 401ks can be a very inexpensive way to have your money invested. And if you're a do-it-yourselfer and you want to kind of continue to keep it there, that might be your best choice for you. However, many of our clients, once they learn about all those special paths that we talked about in the game of life that we're aware of, that many clients are not aware of because we study this and it's what we do, we nerd out on the rules. There are things you don't know, and you don't know what you don't know. So if you work with a financial advisor, you may find that there are other opportunities in the breadth and depth of investment selections in IRAs and Roth IRAs that are more desirable for you than what the limited selection is inside of your 401k plan. And it's just a matter of having a good discussion with somebody who really knows the rules and knows the board game so that they can help you out to make the right choice.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay, last topic is avoiding common mistakes. I think this is an important one. We can talk about maybe hardship withdrawals, loans, and people liquidating their 401ks to pay off their house.
Yeah.
Which is also not an uncommon thing that we see in our industry. And usually 99% of the time, that'll happen before they come and talk to us. Because they asked us, we might recommend something different. Potentially. That's not recommendation right there. It's just, generally speaking, that's usually not the best use of those dollars. But let's talk about some of those common pitfalls, maybe.
Let's get exact on some dollar examples here. So let's say that you have $1 million in your 401k, and let's say you've got a $300,000 mortgage still left on your house, and you're going to retire at 65 or 62 or whatever, and you're like, I'm going to take $300K from my 401k, and I'm going to pay off my house, and I'll have $700K left, and I can turn that into some income stream. Well, yay, that's really cool in basic numbers. But the reality is that if that $1 million was pre-tax money, not a Roth 401k, but a traditional 401k, you go to take that $300,000 out, it gets added on top of your income for that year. So if you take it out in the last year, you're earning, whatever your wages are. Let's say you make $100K. Now it looks like you made $400,000 that year, and your new tax rate is going to be probably closer to 40%. So you're going to lose 40% on that extra $300,000. That's $120,000 of taxes, which now only leaves you with $180,000 to pay down that $300,000 mortgage. And you still owe $120K. And what we see happen is people take the $300K, they don't withhold for taxes, they pay off the mortgage, and then they're surprised in April when all of a sudden they owe $120,000 in taxes. And they're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to come up with $120K? And that is oftentimes a moment when they realize, oh, I probably should have talked to a financial planner. And that's when we get phone calls. And people are like, I just did this big mistake. Well, we don't want you to make that mistake. We want you to talk to the planner early so that you don't make the mistake and make sure that you at least see it coming. I'm not saying that that's not something you can choose to do. You can choose to do that. It's your money. You can do whatever you want with your money. But there might be a better way to do that doesn't cost you $120,000 in taxes. Mm-hmm. And we just want to make sure you've explored those choices before you make that decision. The other challenge is if you do that before you're 59 and a half years old, not only do you have that theoretical 40% tax rate on just basic ordinary income taxes, but there's a 10% penalty tax if you touch your 401k money or your pre-tax retirement money, even the Roth money, by the way, before the age of 59 and a half. So you do not want to take that money out before 59 and a half unless you follow some very, very clear secret path choices that we can educate you about if that makes sense. Something called Rule 72T might make sense to consider. Mm-hmm. Or if you retire after 55, there's some special distribution options. Or if you're disabled, there's some special distribution options. But if you don't qualify for those special scenarios, then you've got some significant tax ramifications if you touch that money early. So just be aware. And if you take a loan against your 401k and then you terminate your job, all of a sudden that loan is now taxable because you got the money out unless you pay it off immediately. So anticipate that as well. As 401k loans are not ideal as far as ways to access money. Occasionally it does make sense, but just be aware of all the pitfalls. So we don't want you to make mistakes.
No, we don't. Any other common pitfalls that we see with 401ks? I think that's really it.
That's a big topic.
I think some of the other ones we talked about earlier, making sure that you're not just sitting in a conservative position if that's not your intention, that can be a common pitfall. Taking all the money out and paying taxes on it when there might be other more efficient ways to do, accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. The loans, loans can be powerful when needed, but making sure you understand how those rules work if you're working there or if you, leave that employer, all those nuances. So I think that's good.
Yeah.
Let's do just the answer.
I concur. Let's do just the answer.
All right.
You hit it.
Okay. Here we go. Just the answer, everyone. Okay. Topic again, what strategies can help you make the most out of your 401k? First thing that we talked about was maximizing contributions. So the first thing usually you'll hear, whether you're talking to your spouse, your neighbor, your friend, whoever it is, employer match. I mean, if you have an employer that is offering a match on your dollars into 401k or any qualified retirement plan that's available to you through your employer, usually it's something you want to try to take advantage of, else you're leaving money on the table, and most people don't want to leave money on the table if it's available for them. So make sure that you're contributing enough to get the employer match if it makes sense for you. And then also we talked about pre-tax versus Roth contributions. So most plans, again, these days offer both the pre-tax or tax-deductible contributions, and then they also offer Roth contributions or after-tax contributions. It's going to be unique to each person on which option they select, which makes sense for them and their tax brackets and what they think the future of tax rates are and everything else combined. But like Tim said earlier, we think it's better to do something rather than nothing. So don't get deered in the headlights and be like, I don't know which option to choose. I'm just not going to do anything. That's usually not the best option. So choose one of them, and you can always adjust as need be later if that makes sense. And then we went back to talking about maximizing retirement contributions again. We talked about the current limits on how much you can contribute to these 401k and other retirement plans. It's $23,500 per year right now if you're under 50. Goes up to $31,000 if you're over the age of 50. There's a new unique additional catch-up contributions for individuals between the ages, I believe, 60 and 63 in that window. It's new legislation, just came out somewhat recently, so take advantage of that if it makes sense for you. We then talked about choosing the right investment options. This, again, is going to be unique to you and your circumstances, your risk tolerance, your time horizon till retirement, all these other factors and nuances, but just make sure that you're aware that you have to choose how your money gets invested in these retirement plans. Someone's not going to do it for you. There's some toss it over your shoulder, easy options like target date funds that will get more conservative as you get closer to that target date. And you can also get granular and build your own allocation. They usually have a wide variety of diversified allocation choices from domestic, international, sometimes some alternative positions like commodities, real estate, things like that. Just make sure that you are aware that those exist and that you have to choose an option and choose one that makes sense for you. If you don't know how to do that, consult somebody that does. That's what we help people with all the time. So just make sure that you're maximizing the investment options that are available to you. We talked about rolling over old 401ks. If you're somebody that maybe have hopped around between some jobs, make sure that you're not leaving old 401ks idle or you're not forgetting about them. At least at a minimum, keep track of them so that way you don't forget they exist. You don't want the state that where you live in to just absorb those assets if they've tried to reach out to you for a long time and they just say, that money's ours now. So be aware of that. There are benefits to combining old 401ks, to consolidate things, as well as looking into rolling over those assets to traditional or Roth IRAs. So that way you can have a wider breadth of investment options that might make more sense than the 401ks that have more limited selections. Final thing we talked about was avoiding common money mistakes when it comes to these retirement plans. So one thing, we talked about, I guess, 2 or 3 things. One of the biggest things that we see happen is people will distribute their entire 401k when they retire in a taxable capacity. So whether they do that to pay off a loan or a mortgage or whatever, that could lead to unforeseen tax implications. And a lot of the times people that do that aren't aware of those issues. So before you make a big decision like that, consult somebody if you don't know the pros and cons of what that might look like for you. And also we talked about loans. A lot of these retirement plans offer loan capacity. So that way you can take money out or borrow it for a short period of time. That comes with its own opportunity costs, just to be aware of those things as well. So bottom line, don't jump in a hole if you know the hole's there. At least consult somebody and say, is there a hole in front of me? And then they can talk you through that stuff and maybe help you get over the hole if it's in your way.
That was a mouthful, Tyler. Well
it
done.
was a lot.
Well done.
Yeah.
There was so much content that we shared. I mean, obviously, I wrote a book on what should I do with my 401k. So when you ask this question, you're going to get a lot of content. I'm sure that you're looking at this Just the Answer and saying, that's a pretty long one. It is. There's even more meat in I think, a well articulated and very quickly delivered way in the full show. So I encourage you, if you're just listening to the Just the Answer, you should probably listen to the whole show. If you listen to the whole show, I think that recap was excellent. And,
thanks.
We're good
we
to
could
go.
probably do a whole show on each of those talking points
That's
that we
fair.
did today. So
That's fair.
check out the book, check out other resources. Your employer also should have plenty of educational materials available to you for your 401k plan that they offer to you. So that's an easy one-stop shop to get more choices on that too. Okay, trivia.
Yeah, let's
do
move on.
some
We gotta,
trivia.
We got to close it out. We
Yeah,
got
we
to
do.
close out the long show.
All right, here we go.
All right.
In Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, what is the name of the artifact that Indiana Jones himself is searching for?
The Holy Grail. Isn't he looking for this? The Holy Grail.
Yeah, it's the Holy Grail.
Oh my goodness! Yes, no.
I was going to give you
Jones-
some choices.
No,
but-
Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade was one of my favorite. Actually, it was my favorite Indiana Jones movie.
great
I
movie.
distinctly remember seeing that. I saw it in theaters. Sean Connery, Harrison Ford. I thought it was better than Raiders. It was better than Temple of Doom, and I think all 3 of those were better than anything that's come out since.
Yep.
But fundamentally,
It was awesome.
Last Crusade was just really, really good, and Sean Connery and Harrison Ford did a great job at that. But yeah, the Holy Grail, of course. I remember the Knights of the Templar and all that stuff. Anyway,
Great movie.
good. Thanks for the flashbacks.
Yep.
Appreciate it. So you hit me with the layup today. That's great.
You're welcome. We'll get you next week. Thank you
right.
guys for tuning in.
Thanks.
Seriously, we appreciate your minutes.
Spot on. Thank
That's
you very
it.
much. And hope you enjoyed Clear Money Talk. Until next time.
See you soon.
Tim Clairmont and Tyler Andrews are investment advisor representatives offering securities and advisory services through Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC, a broker-dealer and registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity. The views depicted in this material are for information purposes only and are not necessarily those of Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC. They should not be considered specific advice or recommendations for any individual. For a comprehensive review of your personal situation, always consult with a tax or legal advisor. Neither Cetera Advisor Network, LLC, nor any of its representatives may give legal or tax advice. All investing involves risk, including the possible loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment strategy will be successful. Examples referenced are hypothetical only and do not represent the actual performance of any particular investments. Distributions from traditional IRAs and employer-sponsored retirement plans are taxed as ordinary income, and if taken prior to reaching age 59.5, may be subject to an additional 10% IRS tax penalty. Investors should consider the investment objectives, risks and charges, and expenses of mutual funds and ETFs carefully before investing. The prospectus, which contains this and other information about the funds and ETFs can be obtained directly from the company or from your financial professional. The prospectus should be read carefully before investing or sending money. A diversified portfolio does not assure a profit or protect against loss in a declining market. Dollar cost averaging will not guarantee a profit or protect you from loss, but may reduce your average cost per share in a fluctuating market. Investors cannot invest directly in indexes. The performance of any index is not indicative of the performance of any investment and does not take into account the effects of inflation and the fees and expenses associated with investing. Although it is possible to have guaranteed income for life with a fixed annuity, there is no assurance that this income will keep up with inflation. There is a surrender charge imposed generally during the first 5 to 7 years or during the rate guarantee period. There is a surrender charge imposed generally during the first 5 to 7 years that you own the contract. Withdrawals prior to age 59.5 may result in a 10% IRS tax penalty in addition to any ordinary income tax. The guarantee of the annuity is backed by the financial strength of the underlying insurance company. Investment subaccount values will fluctuate with changes in market conditions. An investment in a variable annuity involves investment risk, including possible loss of principal. Variable annuities are designed for long-term investing. The contract, when redeemed, may be worth more or less than the total amount invested. Variable annuities are subject to insurance-related charges, including mortality and expense charges, administrative fees, and the expenses associated with the underlying subaccounts. Investors should consider the investment objectives, risks, and charges and expenses of the variable annuity carefully before investing. The prospectus contains this and other information about the variable annuity. Contact Clear Financial Partners at info@clearfp.com or 503-579-1000 to obtain a prospectus, which should be read carefully before investing or sending money. The cost and availability of life insurance depend on factors such as age, health, and the type and amount of insurance purchased. Before implementing a strategy involving life insurance, it would be prudent to make sure that you are insurable by having the policy approved. As with most financial decisions, there are expenses associated with the purchase of life insurance. Policies commonly have mortality and expense charges. In addition, if a policy is surrendered prematurely, there may be surrender charges and income tax implications. Clear Financial Partners is located at 15573 Bangor Road, Suite 100, Lake Oswego, Oregon, 97035. For more information, please call us at 503-579-1000.